everyone, welcome to an exciting episode of ARG Presents. I'm your boy, Amigo Aaron, joined by a man who thought MicroProse was some sort of poetry convention for short people. I give you the Brent.
Actually, I thought it was a machine to press pedals for like scrapbooking.
What? What is that? Is that supposed to be funny, or is that a real thing?
That we'll go with both.
Well, trust me. Good Lord. So, oh boy, we're starting off with a bang today, boy. So, if you saw the show last week, we spun this crazy wheel we've got. We made a crazy deal. It's sort of a repeat deal. Coming back from the old Thanksgiving Marathon, we're going to be looking at games, Brentster, that were put out by the legendary outfit MicroProse. Ooh,
yes,
MicroProse.
They did a few things.
Now, MicroProse has a ridiculous amount of gamage in their back catalog, but a lot of the stuff that MicroProse didn't make everything. They actually, they did a lot of making their own stuff, but they also published a lot of other people's stuff. Now,
yes,
I looked over a huge, massive list of MicroProse software, Brent. It's sort of a top 50 or top 70. They did a lot of games that were off the charts popular. Do you have any personal experience or memories of playing Microsoft games? I mean, there's so many of them. You can't miss.
Tons of Microsoft games, but also MicroProse games.
Yes. It's so
you make
close.
that mistake too many times, Aaron. You're gonna get us killed.
What what Bill Gates will come get me?
I ain't worried about
Bill
Bill Gates.
He wishes we'd confused it with MicroProse. Come on, have you seen their games? So what kind of MicroProse games did you play back in the day?
To be honest, not a ton.
I knew you were going to say that.
I mean, I'm sure everyone's played like through XCOM and Civilization and that kind of stuff.
Have you played through those?
Oh yeah,
you played through XCOM?
I played them all.
I can't believe it.
Well, the later ones.
So, what else you got? XCOM Civ, any of their smaller? How about their mini simulators, Brent?
Yeah, MicroProse also did Roller Coaster Tycoon.
That's correct, absolutely.
Yeah, and I absolutely love those games.
2003, that one came out, and that was a pretty popular title, Brent. One of their most popular title. You mentioned the XCOM series, another one of their popular titles. We've played that over on the Amigos, and I had high hopes that some of the XCOM combat stuff would make it into my game this week. We'll get into that later. What about we played F-15 Strike Eagle, every conceivable console version on the Thanksgiving Marathon. So you never really dipped your toe in the pool on any of their simulation games that they released. There were many of these things that they did. Oh
no, I've played lots of Civilization games.
I'm talking simulation, like your F-19s, gunships.
Simulation.
Yeah, Gunship 2000.
Not so much. Not so much, to be honest. Simulation games like flight sims, not really my bag.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. What about their crazy combat simulation games? They were behind the video game version of the old Axis and Allies. That's another one that was a pretty popular game. I've played the board game Axis and Allies. Holy smokes. Set aside a couple months, dude. You know what I'm saying?
It's a little involved.
A little involved. Of course, synonymous with MicroProse was the old Sid Meier's, Brent.
Absolutely.
He did a little game for them called Pirates. Another game we covered on the Amigos. Another game we sucked at. By the way, as I recall, me and Boat didn't do too good on that one. I think we got caught out to the carpet on how pathetic we were. So these guys ran the gambit, though. It's funny, when you look at their back catalog, there was a lot of stuff they did, and I have vague recollections of playing. For example, and this came up before we started the show, they were behind the Star Trek The Next Generation game, Final Unity. That was one of their babies. Did you ever play their They did a couple Star Trek games. Did you ever play their Star Trek stuff?
I have not.
I've played that one.
Enough, I like Star Trek, but I have not played any of those games.
I played that one back in the day. They did a great game that me and Boat covered on the Amigos. It gets no dap, it gets no love, and I really enjoyed it. It was called Covert Action. You were played like a spy, and it was sort of made up of mini games that were like lock picking and stuff like that, encrypting messages and stuff. I thought that was a pretty slick game. They were behind the Falcon series, which was a great series. I actually played. I think I played Falcon 4.0, I believe is the one I played, and that was, again, you have to, if you're into really high-end simulators like fighter simulators, this is the company for you. They did a lot of that stuff. I was surprised how many graphical adventure games they did. They did more than I would have remembered, Brent. They also did games like they were. I couldn't believe this one. They were in bed with Jeff Crampton on the old Stunt Car Racer, one of our favorites. They did Airborne Ranger was another one they were involved in. That's one you used to play, in that Airborne Ranger. No, you didn't play that one either. So really, you've never played any of their games, have you? This is the first game you've ever played for MicroProse.
I played a ton of Roller Coaster Tycoon back in the day.
Now, one of our chatters, Frodo, mentions they were behind the Formula One Grand Prix, which, yes, and they had a couple sequels of that one. They did the Impossible Mission 2025, which I didn't like, but that was one of theirs. Again, they did a lot of crazy flight stuff, and they also what I also have played I didn't like. Red Storm Rising was based on a Clancy novel. So they've had a lot of history come and go through them. Now they went away for the longest time, Brent. They were gone until they closed the doors in 2003, and the brand has came back a few times, but they were actually revived again last year. They were purchased and revived by a fellow, and I guess they're back in action. And I saw the net was full when I looked them up. There was all sorts of references to new stuff they're working on. So I guess there are going to be new MicroProse games, if not out now, coming out soon. So that should be interesting. I don't know what they've got aside from the name of MicroProse, but they may have something. Who knows? So,
well, I'm sure they have their back catalog.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about new stuff. We all played the old stuff. We want new stuff, man. So, with that in mind, we were tasked to pick a couple games in the MicroProse catalog. We picked two vastly different games, didn't we, Brent?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
We're going to let you start the dance this week, Brent. Now, I have to say, I had never, ever heard of your game, ever. So,
I haven't either.
So, I don't know how did you come up with this one?
Well, it might have been a little bit of a mind manipulation by our good friend Frodo NL, who mentioned it in chat last week, but I didn't see it. So I went through, got me a big old list of MicroProse games, and I wanted to find something that they developed and something that they published. You know, if I could get both, that'd be a perfect package.
Me too.
And then I was like, you know what? Now I'm going to see if I can find a Sid Meier game that they developed and published. And when you narrow it down that much, that list starts getting smaller and smaller. And I saw this, I was like, man, I don't remember anything from them from this, this far back. And when I looked at the game, I was like, all right, this is what I'm picking. It was such an obvious choice. And that's why I went with Floyd of the Jungle.
The title does not inspire confidence.
Well, this has a pretty interesting story behind it. And, of course, developed and published by MicroProse. This was actually designed by Sid the Man Meier himself. This was after he was coming off of Hellcat Ace. And he's reported in saying back in '83 when this actually came out that he had just finished Hellcat Ace and he was looking for ideas for new games, kind of going through that mental process. And he said there was a movie on television, and it was one of the Tarzan movies. And he was like, my buddy and coworker Bo Derek was doing some animation and had some tools for that. and he kind of looked at the screen, and he looked at the animations that this guy was doing, and he kind of put the two together, and that's how we got Floyd of the Jungle, a Tarzan-themed, single-screen, multiplayer, up to 4 players, racer game. And what I mean by racer game is you and up to 4 players or computer-controlled players. If you're playing just by yourself, it throws 2 computer-controlled players in there with you. And you have to race from the bottom of the screen up to save your lady, Janice, which is located somewhere at the top of the screen. And this is done by going up and down vines, avoiding pygmies, collecting birds along the way. You're saving birds for some reason. Of course, you've got to dodge, alligators and pumas or some other cat-like creature. And it's all about who can collect the most stuff or punch the most pygmies, because that's something that you could do in the game.
I didn't even try that.
Yeah, well, we'll go into that when we go into gameplay. Who can do all the most of this stuff, and the level actually ends when someone saves Janice. So it's all about, you want to do the extra stuff because the extra stuff gives you points. Like if you pick up a bird, you get a point. If you punch a pygmy, you get 2 points. And if you reach Janice first, you get 4 points. And the game continuously goes through these screens. Anytime someone reaches Janice, it will take you to a new screen. And you play for 99 time units, which they're certainly longer than seconds, but they're not as long as minutes. So the game
units?
can end.
That's what
Yeah, time units. That's what they're called in video games.
Oh, okay.
So the game can actually end mid-screen, and then it goes and shows everyone's final totals, and whoever has the most points wins. So even if you don't get to Janice first on a screen or several screens, because usually you can get through, somewhere between 4 and 6 screens during a play session. Just because you don't reach Janice doesn't mean you're going to lose. If you can do enough other extra stuff, because usually the extra stuff is slightly out of the way, takes you off the main path. As long as you can do that other stuff, if someone's just continuously focusing on getting Janice every time, you're not necessarily going to lose. There's still a chance you're going to win. And if you die, the pygmies will throw spears, or of course if you get you jump onto a snake, or if you get eaten by an alligator, all those things kill you, but you're not out for the round. You just reappear at the start. So it's always a race, and you're always going, and you're going to die. It's just, you're never going to get through a level unscathed every time. Beautiful concept, especially for 1982, 1983 when this was released. This came out in 82 on the Atari 8-bit, and it came out in 83 for the C64. Games like this they were never popular in the 80s that I'm aware of, because I certainly didn't play them. But they gained popularity in the early 2010s and have maintained some popularity, but it's definitely not large enough to even be called its own genre. But this speed platforming concept, I always thought was born much, much later. I never knew about this game. And it does so well at making things tense without, you're running, you're jumping, you're doing all this stuff, and you want to be first, and you're clawing and trying to get ahead of people, which makes the game tense. But when you die, that tension's released, and you kind of refocus, and it puts you back at the beginning of the screen. You just do it all again. If you had 1 or 2 or 3 buddies, and this was your game, you could probably play this game for hours, and never get bored of it. You know, because you've got that competitive nature of real people. Playing against the computer continuously does draw the fun value down some. That tension's still there, but the actual, you know, you don't get a brag when you win or when you get something that you beat someone for collecting the bird and they were all just so close. You don't get that, you know, to brag about that, which is part of the fun of these type of games, which is probably why this game reviewed so bad. In '84, people were killing it. You know, people were saying that, you know, this game doesn't have any great moments. It doesn't have any good moments. It's no fun. There's nothing here. Poorly executed. They said, you know, the most positive thing that reviewers said was like, you know, if you like Donkey Kong, this is kind of okay. And those people are missing the point. This isn't Donkey Kong. Yes, it's a single-screen game. Yes, the graphics are minimalized and due to the hardware limitations, I'm sure. But the animations are smooth. Things look like what they're supposed to look like. You play as a stick man. But the stick man, he runs and he jumps and he climbs, and you can tell what he's doing the entire time. So I really think the reviewers couldn't understand what made this game fun, because they all talk about how it's just another platform game. It's not just another platform game. It's a racing game. It's very frustrating to go back and read old reviews like this. And I guess video games have evolved to become so much more than what's always on the screen. You know, there's different things that make different games fun. And when you go back and you read these old reviews of people who just don't get it, it's very strange. What did you think about this game, Aaron?
You know, of course, I'd never heard of this one, ever. And so when I booted it up and I saw what it was, and I played we're looking at the Atari version. I played the C64 version, which they look very similar.
They do, yeah.
When I started playing this, I was like, "What?" I didn't know I have no idea what I was doing, and I just saw other guys take off, and I was like, "It's a race." And so once I got that, I was like, "Okay, that's different." And then after that, you've got it's a platformer. It's also with elements of Frogger in there, but it's not a Frogger clone. And it's funny how many games get compared to Donkey Kong. That always drives me bananas. Everything is a Donkey Kong. This has zero to do with Donkey Kong, except for the fact that you jump and you're a guy. That's it. Everything else. Yeah. This is much more like a Frogger clone, but it's not even that. This is its own game. I'm so stunned to hear that the reviewers can this, because I thought this was one of the more brilliant games we played recently. Yes. I really like this game a lot. The fact that you can play I had a feeling, of course, I didn't try to play multiplayer because I just had me. But I had a feeling since you were racing guys that you could play multiple people in this, which is awesome. And the fact that it's a race that made it a lot more fun for me. Well, that's because the computer drives you forward, and the computer makes mistakes, which I also like. I mean, and when you'll get the screens where you all die a dozen. I don't know how many men you've got. You got a lot.
Unlimited. It's all time based.
But it's awesome to see them get way ahead, and right before they get to the end, they die. You're like, I've still got a chance. So not only are you watching yourself, but you're watching your opponents run up the course. You know, which makes that's more. I like that aspect of it. The controls are fine. The animations and stuff are perfectly serviceable. I mean, you've got to understand what you're looking at here. For example, the screen we're looking at here, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers of gameplay, 6 different levels. I thought this was super clever. I'll be honest with you, and the fact that I didn't know who made it either. I didn't look into it that far, but that explains why it's not just some kind of mundane crap. I mean, this is a very clever game. And one would wonder why this sort of play element hasn't been used more. You know, the multiple people on the screen run around like that, that makes it a lot of fun. it's at least a C64 version and this version too. It looks like they're both if I may channel my inner Boat, they're both very brown. So if you've got a problem with that, like Boat does, I'm sure that's one of the things Boat would mention, how brown it is. But in all honesty, this game was as much fun as I've had playing a game here in quite a while. I mean, I'd put this game up in that upper echelon of your found games, Brent. You lucked into another one because there's a lot of fun to be had here, in my opinion.
Yes.
I can't figure out why this would have gotten canned back in the day. I mean, to me, it seems like a winner.
Well, like I said, I think that they just didn't understand. They didn't understand why this was fun, which is, that happens. That does happen. Another thing about this that is kind of weird are some of the control choices, at least on the C64 version. To punch, you have to hold the jump button.
See, I never punched one time. I didn't even know that was an option.
So, to punch, you have to hold the jump button. And when you press the jump button, you jump.
Right.
So, you have to jump towards the pygmy while holding and size it up correctly, land right in front of them, keep holding the jump button, and then you will punch him. And when you punch him, he even has a little, like, I got knocked out falling animation. It's pretty good.
So they added some little elements of almost like kangaroo to it. That's what you're saying with your ability. I never punched one time, but that was an option. But I kind of like the idea that you go over and knock those little suckers out. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and they're 2 points. So if you knock out 2 of those, that's equal to getting to Janice first. Because it's hard to do. They throw spears randomly, so it's a gamble if you want to get that close to them and jump and land right in front of them to punch. Another thing that was kind of odd is the game has levels, like you said before, and if you hold down on the joystick and press jump, excuse me, he will actually go down a level. And there are aspects where this is important because some things you're kind of running in between platforms, sort of very like the road section of Frogger, where only the things on your line affect you. So, if an alligator is on line 2 and you're on line 1, the alligator on line 2 can't hurt you. So you can use the down and jump to kind of move between those platforms. However, it also glitches the game. You can actually stand on the bottom level and hold down and hit jump, and your guy will jump down, and you can jump all the way off the screen like that.
I never did that.
Yeah, so the game's not without bugs. However, I think everything is good enough. And sometimes being good enough isn't good enough. But for this game, where the fun is not in the graphics and it's not in the sound, because the music and sound on this, not great.
No.
I mean, it's passable at the very best. This, you just turn on Welcome to the Jungle, blast it through your stereo speakers, and and just put it on repeat. That's how you should play this game. That's
one thing I thought they missed the boat on, because the C60, the Atari and especially the C64 both have really good sound. And this game, I wouldn't say had good sound. No. I think I just don't think they bothered, to be completely honest with you. And I think they could have done some really good stuff in this jungle motif. I think they could have come up with something really good. And on the C64 in particular, that's a sin when you don't take advantage of the nature of that aspect of the sound, because then you could have, that's one of the. And the graphics, I think, are fine. It's really the sound is the biggest Achilles heel. I agree with you. I mean, you can get frustrated if you die over and over, but that's just the nature of the game. It can also be frustrating when the computer leaves you in the dust. But again, that's the nature of the game too, and it makes you press harder. So I can't fault it for those. I can't even fault it for the colors, because the colors, while there's not a lot of super bright colors, it simulates what you would expect to see in a jungle environment pretty well. I think
the C64 has better graphics, better colors.
They're still brown Trust me. Now, thanks to Boat, I always look at that every time.
Another aspect of this game, right? Because if you're playing with your buddies and your buddy owns the game and plays it every day and is awesome at it, and you come in and you want to play too, but you know you're just going to get smoked. This actually has handicaps, and it does it thematically. So when you start the game and you're choosing all your options, you know, you can set how difficult the computer is, and you can even set the computer to hard in single player and still handicap yourself. And it handicaps you by saying you have either one bad leg or two bad legs. And when you have, you know, when you're handicapped, your jump isn't as long. It doesn't go as far. And he's just slightly slower. So even back then, they were thinking about that kind of thing because they knew it would be important. So good on them. Good on them. I really enjoyed this game.
Yeah.
Now, Aaron, if you want to pick up a copy of Floyd of the Jungle, you can run right off to your eBay and slap down $300 dues.
Yeah, I had a feeling it was going to be.
To get a written-on, no-cover Atari 400-800 cassette version. I don't think this game is I don't think this game is $300 good. However, if you need to learn how to use an emulator, I recommend playing it on the C64. Load up Vice. You'll have it running in, 10 minutes. Super easy to do. You can even play this online, although I didn't have the best of luck with that. Play this game.
I played it at archive.org. That's where I played it. Yeah.
Play this game. It's worth playing. It's worth taking a look at, just to respect that this concept and this style of a game was in the mind of Sid Meier's, back in the 80s. And I think it is an incredibly impressive feat, both from an animation standpoint, because the animation on the running and the jumping and stuff like that is very good. And just from a design standpoint, I wish there were more levels, but I think the levels that we did get are pretty well thought out and fun to do. You owe it to yourself to go out and emulate this.
I agree. I think this is one that you need to go out of your way to have a look at. We did get just at the 11th hour, we did get a Discord review from Frodo NL, who's with us in the chat room today. Frodo writes, "It would be easy to dismiss this game as a too simple platform game with somewhat irritating controls. Jump to get to the ladder gets a tad irritating after a while. But that would not be completely fair. Single player is not too much fun, although in version 2 at least you have computer opponents. But multiplayer up to 4 in the Atari version, it looks to be a lot of fun with a group of friends. Having some beers beforehand might help, though. 7 out of 10. I agree. I agree with you on that. I think this would be a blast to play with your buddies and on the big screen, such as it would look. I think you picked a real winner there, Brent. I got to give you credit on that one. So,
well, with that, Aaron, what did you bring to the table?
So listen, Brentster, it's been said that occasionally I will
phone it in.
I will try to dodge some of these tougher games. I mean, I think in my defense, I got a loaded schedule up until recently. This week I had a little time, and I wanted to give the people their money's worth. And so I wanted to pick one of MicroProse's offerings that was real a deep dive. Now I could have chose one of their brilliant flight sims, but I wanted to choose a game that I remembered hearing about back in the day and always piqued my interest, and which I'll get into why momentarily. So I went ahead, Brent, and picked Bloodnet. Bloodnet. Yes. What a game this is. A unique take on multiple genres here. So let's flash back before we get too deep into this game, okay? This game was released, and I played the DOS and Amiga version. I looked at both of them, but mostly I played this on DOS. This game was released in '93 on DOS, '94 on the Amiga. if you look back around that time, in 19, you know, I'm an old role player, Brent, as you are. In '89, a game was released by FOSSA called Shadowrun, the role-playing game. And Shadowrun was this game that employed a lot of, it basically combined the areas of monsters and elves and that sort of high fantasy with technology, futurism, William Gibson style cyberpunk stuff. And what you got was a real interesting mix of a game. You would be in a party of enhanced, like cybered up orcs. You would have mages and wizards that were partially cyberpunked up. And you would go on runs for megacorps, because mega corporations ran the whole world at this point. It was a dark future, you know, and this is a fun game. We played this quite a bit. And one of the aspects of the game would be decking. And decking, which of course, I believe that the whole concept of that stuff all came from the old Neuromancer book. And I'm sure other people before it had some similar things, but I believe a lot of the lingo came from Neuromancer and
Sure.
you know, jacking in and all this jive. And so that stuff was all pretty fresh back in those days. Let's fast forward to 92, I believe it was, which was when White Wolf jumped on the role-playing scene with a game called Vampire the Masquerade. You remember that one, Brent? We played a lot of Vampire back in the day. And
Yes.
this is another game that sort of took the role-playing world by storm because they took a crack at vampire society, what that would be like. What it would be like, I mean, the vampires are effectively like wrestlers. They're doing kayfabe. It's called the Masquerade. You just don't go around telling people you're a vampire because you're protecting this intricate system, this political system that the vampires have built up. And it was real intriguing with different types of vampires who were, not only were they weren't the kind of vampires that went around like Dracula. These vampires were heads of industry. They pulled the strings from behind. They were affecting the world and the path that the world was taking behind the scenes. A lot of political intrigue. A fascinating game. And White Wolf went on to make more games than that. World of Darkness, Werewolf, and a bunch of other ones. But Vampire was the big money maker for those guys. So this game coming out in '93 was hot on the heels of these two big role-playing juggernauts. And trust me when I tell you that these things revived effectively what was a dormant role-playing scene. The D&D thing was sort of at a lull at this point. And so White Wolf came along and FOSSA came along and really shook it up with these two games. Great games, which I'll play these anytime they get a chance. So when this game was put together, I have no doubt that these guys were influenced heavily by these two role-playing giants because the concept of this game is so bizarre and goofy that you could only, I have no doubt that they were reading up on this stuff when they put it together. So flash forward to Manhattan 2094, Brent. You know it's going to be a scene there. And
That's a happening.
It's guess what? New York's become this giant, dark, desperate place that is, headed up by multiple megacorps, including the big one, Trans-Tech. Trans-Tech is a real sort of evil. Well, let's not say evil. Let's say self-important, overarching corporation that does a lot of stuff in the city. And of course it's 2094, so you've got to have a cyberspace element to this. And so in the game, decking and moving around in cyberspace is a big deal. It's a part of the game. So the game starts off quite goofily, I'll have to say. As you watch Ransom Stark, which I get a name that was so '90s cool that I remember ripping it off for what and using the name in one of my role playing games. I don't remember which character I used, but I know I knew the name, and I didn't even remember it until I read it here. I was like, oh, I've ripped that name off in the past. This game is ripe with names you can rip off for role playing games. I mean, there's tons of them in here. I kept looking at these. I'm like, I got to take some notes on all these names. We're gonna rip off all these things. So anyway, Ransom Stark is a sort of he's an ex-tech giant guy that basically, from what I could read, he got sort of used up by the corpse and almost died. And a lady saved him by basically putting these neural inhibitors in his head to save his life, and he owes her. And he at that point went into the shadier realm of like freelance decking, freelance investigation. So think detective, hard-boiled detective guy. Oh, by the way, he's neurally enhanced and goes into cyberspace, that sort of thing. And he gets a job. It seems like an easy job to do some work for a lady. The funny thing is, the beginning of this game, because at the beginning you just watch this, you're in a bar, and this lady comes up in a full cape. I mean, like a Dracula cape. Yeah. And so that right away, I was like, what the hell? And she's like, hi, I'm such and such Van Helsing. I was like, what? I was like, subtlety not at play here. And so once you do the job, she wants you to come to her apartment at 666 something street. I mean, so there was no subtlety here at all. And so you go there and you're like, okay, I want my money. She's like, oh, you're going to get what you got coming. And of course, your guy an idiot. He's like, yeah, that's what I want. Give me what I got coming to me. It's just like an old Bugs Bunny cartoon. So they give it to him. When her dad comes out, who also in full cape, and says, yeah, I'm a vampire. I'm going to bite you. And he does bite you. And now the funny thing is, when you wake up, the neural inhibitors in your head have made it so the full vampirism hasn't taken you over. So you can still, because and the guy that bitches like, yep, now you work for me. I control you. You're one of my men. And your guy's like, screw you. And he punches the vampire in the face and it runs out the door. Yeah. That's the opening. And I thought to myself, oh boy, I'm in it now with this one. And in it I was.
And something you need to mention, the opening is like 15 minutes long.
The opening, it takes a while.
Fully voice act.
Well, that's depending on which version you play. Okay, so as far as I can tell, there were 3 versions of this. There was version 1 that had no voice acting. Version 2...
Don't play that.
Well, I did play that one, actually. Version 2, which I think was a CD release, had full voice acting. And the Amiga version didn't have voice acting either. So I went with the non-voice acting because so I could hear them in my head reading the dialogue. But I did watch some guys play the voice acting one. It seemed okay. It was over-the-top baloney, as you would expect. So one thing, this game, you could tell right away that whoever put this together was really riding on social trends and stuff. Because even if you look at the box cover, I wanted to mention this before I forgot. It looks like someone cybered up and then graffitoed David Bowie's face. It looks just like David Bowie as some kind of cyber vampire. So you knew right away you were in for it. So what is this game? Well, as Ransom Stark, you're slowly becoming a vampire. And so you need to go and the overarching plot is you need to go and rescue your friend who can save you. She's the one that put the neural the thing in your head, and you need to go to her, and she's a good friend. That's the overarching plot of the game, but it's not that simple, because one thing you learn is the world of Bloodnet has a lot going on. The way the interface works in this is when you move your mouse to the top of the screen, you have a pull-down menu, and it presents you with various options, including examining stuff, combat, surfing the net, changing locations. You've also got an inventory screen, and before you even start the game, once you watch that intro video, you can choose how you want your character to be made. Now, there's a quick way, but that's for suckers. You got to play the long way, and this is that classic moral question angle to make your character. It asks you all these questions that are morality based, and how you answer changes your character statistics. I love that. I've got no idea how this affected my character, but I thought that was kind of a neat angle. And Ultima, I think, was the first game that I remember hearing that did that. And I thought that was cool. So you make your character up that way, or you can just have the computer just roll them up like that, which is less fun. And you can sort of pick what your guy looks like, but there's not like a ton of choices. And you can't.
Yeah, you pick your avatar image
right
for conversation.
And you can't be anyone but Ransom Stark. That's it, because that makes sense. So when you're in a scenario like in the very first scene, you're in a destroyed lab of your friend, and you want to pick stuff up. This system took me a while to figure out. It's so goofy. You can actually drag and drop items onto your guy, but the way you pick them up is weird. One click is different than 2 clicks. You can right click on stuff. It's real. It was not the most streamlined system I've ever seen.
It was not intuitive. No.
If you go to the inventory screen, it's real funky. Like, for example, I wanted to put memory in my deck, so you have to go to the inventory screen, pick the memory off, click on the memory, and your mouse will hold it as you cycle through to get to the screen you need where the deck's at. Then you can do the memory swap, and then when you take the old memory out, you've got to put it back in your inventory. It's exhausting. Maybe there was a different way to do it, but I couldn't find one. And all the other people I read about had similar issues with the kind of goofy inventory selections and just picking stuff up. It's just weird. Now, after a while, you get used to it. Something else that you'll notice is that your guy walks around like an idiot. The pathing, the way your guys move, the graphics in this, I would call them subpar, Brent. The backgrounds are, it's sort of like the aspect of it's 3D, but it's a 2D game. So your guy walks in front of stuff. It's just real strange and awkward and slow. It was pretty much the same on both machines. I thought maybe the Amiga one would be crisper since it came out later, but it really was pretty much about the same when it comes to that. This game is one of these games where you need a pad of paper. All right. The first thing that I did, your guy has this little personal, like basically a reminder that he keeps on him. And inside of this, he's written down a bunch of stuff he needs to do. And so you can look at it and get clues as to what you need to do and where you need to go. Now, this thing's always with you, and you can even go back and rewind dialogue. That's one of the features in the UI. You can go back and kind of look at what you'd said. So they tried to help you out a little bit, but you're going to need to take notes just so you'll know who wants what, where they are, how to get there. When you leave the original scene, the world. One thing about this game is that the world is completely opened up. So you don't really have to earn the ability to go places. I mean, you can pretty much go anywhere, right? Tons of places right at the beginning of the game. And at each of these places, when you go to like an overworld screen in New York, there'll be highlights on the screen you can click on. It scrolls up, so like 2 or 3 screens. So I mean, there's a lot of places you can go. And then when you go there, you're presented with a static screen with some people walking around on it, like a bar or a street corner or whatever, and then that's where you'll start doing your dialogue and your bartering and whatnot. So effectively, when you pick a new level, it's not like this isn't an action game. There's no like walking from part to part. You just are there, and it's a static screen, so it's straight up graphical adventure. There's no action at all, except, which I'll get to.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So there are two real kind of goofy aspects of this game. It's pretty goofy anyway, but they were like, we can make this goofier. And so the first goofy thing is combat. Combat's a lot like making your character. You can make it real simple, or you can make it not simple. And either way, you're probably going to get killed, unfortunately. Combat is one of the goofier things I've ever seen. So when you start a combat, if you take the advanced combat, first thing you do is place your guys. You will end up getting a party of guys in this, and so you'll place them, and then you'll decide what each guy does to the enemy. So keep in mind, let's say you've got a party of 4 guys. You've got to go through and make sure all their inventories are up to spec. Make sure all their weapons are mounted. The whole nine. You're responsible for all this stuff. Then you'll pick. Not only will you pick who they shoot at, you'll also pick what part of the body they're aiming at. It's that you're like, man, this sounds real intense. Well, when the deal goes down, actually, once you program everything in, it goes pretty quick. it's just weird looking. It's an unyielding and slow. It's the combat is universally panned. I mean, this combat system was bizarre. What did you think of the combat in this, Brent?
Well, I think you can't just jump in at the combat. I think you got to roll. To really get my view on this game, you got to roll back a few steps.
Okay, go ahead, give me some here, right in the middle.
If you like the concept of a vampire gothic cyberpunk game that is deep in lore, although much of it cheesy lore, I think this game is probably right up your alley. This is not a good game for our show, because even if I played this from the second you picked it until right before the show, quit my job, didn't sleep, I don't know that I would get through this, because it is so daunting. Everything is so, I played one with voice acting. So all the voice dialogue plays out, and the voice acting is decent. Some characters obviously better than others. But everyone has, emotion in their voice, and they say their lines with pauses, and they're not just saying like one or two sentences worth of dialogue.
No. This
is a book of dialogue, and it just goes. Some people just go on and on and on. Like, did you assemble a team?
Oh yeah, you got to.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Assembling a team, if you actually talk to people to hear their story and to hear their motivation, just starting the game and assembling a team, you're in for 2 hours.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You're in for 2 hours, and you've accomplished nothing.
And that's assuming you already know the interface and stuff, because that takes a while to get that.
Yes. And games like this, although the story is there, the concept is there, even the visuals, because it's CGI backgrounds with pixel art walking on them. So it's okay. It's okay. It gets the job done.
It's not great. I didn't think it was that good.
It's okay. For the year that this came out, 93, it's okay. And also for the scope of the game. But the diving in, you can't play this in a couple hours.
No. No.
Because there's so much. And you can tweak so much. You can tweak all of your equipment, who has what, your stats. There are like 30 or 25 different stats that you can put points into.
Yeah.
And it's so big and deep that I don't feel like I can properly review the game.
I knew this was coming. You got cried. You got scared. You cried. You left, right?
No. You can play this game. How long did you play this game?
Oh, God. I played. My initial play was like 4 hours just to get my feet wet. And then I would play an hour or two when I got a spare time. So I'm sad to say this, I probably stunk about 8 or 9 hours into this thing after it was all said and done.
Okay, I didn't do nearly that much.
Well, I mean, I knew I had to go. I knew it was going to be a lot. That's why I picked it this week.
To answer your the question about the combat, it's just like the rest of the game. It's daunting.
It's goofy.
You do all this. I mean, it's. I don't want to say it's like XCOM, but it's sort of like XCOM. You set everything up, and then it kind of does.
Yeah, I don't think it's like XCOM at all.
And there's definitely sometimes when you're like, yeah, that guy's gonna die, and you just set and he dies.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, okay, a load of save.
Oh yeah, you save a lot in this one.
Oh yes. Too big for me. For the interface, it's too big. If this had a modern revival where they streamlined a lot of things, I could really get into this. Because although the vampire cyberpunk mesh I don't think is necessary. I think both of those are strong enough to stand up on their own. Having a game where they're meshed together, I find interesting, but I'm not willing to invest the time that Bloodnet wants me to invest. So if the concept sounds good to you, if you want to really throw yourself into this world, I think it's good enough. If you're willing to put up with all the quirks, I think it's good enough to do it. But in my eyes, I wouldn't do it. You can buy this game on Steam or Good Old Games for like $6.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna. This game's funny, and I'll explain why. Get back to combat though. This combat is complicated and goofy. I didn't like it.
It's over the top.
That was a mistake.
Like everything else.
And we've also got to talk about, speaking of complicated and goofy, let's talk about going into cyberspace in this. The representation of cyberspace in this is goofy. It's a guy. It's just real weird. It's crap floating around. Man. It is. I mean, I read a few comparisons to Lawnmower Man. I hadn't seen that movie for a long time.
Yeah,
but it reminds me of like someone. You got to think this was 93, so people were not 100% sure what a cyberspace would look like, and so three-dimensional objects floating around and grid patterns and stuff. That's sort of what people thought it was going to look like.
A lot of floating. And
cyberspace in this is critical to the game because that's a lot of what you're doing is involving going in there. A lot of the game is upgrading your soul box and your deck to get in better equipped, get better countermeasures to deal with ice. You meet people in the cyberspace. You come across states that can capture you. If you get captured, you can lose your. They can take your memory away. They can do worse. It's real strange. I had even more trouble understanding how that worked than I did. But I mean, in essence, cyberspace is a lot like moving around in the real world. It's just much goofier looking. It's sort of the same. You're going from screen to screen, but it's really bizarrely rendered. Once you realize that, it makes it a little bit easier. But it's real dangerous. You can get killed real easy or get messed up real easy in cyberspace. So so if you don't know what you're doing, it's funny. As much as I moved around this game, I didn't go into cyberspace all that much just because it was so bizarre and hard to understand. Let's face facts on something though. When you've got a game like this, when you've got these multiple genres coming together, what you come up, it's tough to pull off. And I think you could have pulled off a vampire cyberpunk thriller, but they didn't because I don't think they did a very good job of writing the game. I mean, I can get past the technological issues or even the stupid combat or the graphics, but the dialogue ranges from like cringeworthy to okay. I don't think it ever gets great. The best parts of this game are the most boring parts, unfortunately, which is how Ransom gets and interacts with people. One of the things that you could tell Ransom was sort of a big deal. He's got a lot of friends. This game is set up like where you go on quests. Instead of going to go get, 4 of something or whatever, they want you to get them a certain ice countermeasure, or they want a certain deck element, or they want something like that. And so that's what you're after. You have to write down your note, and you have to go try to find where that would be. There's unique characters in this. I mean, everyone in this this world's bleak, so it's kind of a dark, bleak world. There's drugs in this. You're buying and selling of drugs, giving drugs. Another element of this game that makes it real goofy is your element that since you're a vampire, you have to also keep occasionally feeding, and which means you're just killing people. And you can do. I don't know. Did you try to bite anybody, Brent, when you were playing? You could bite anybody. I've read some of the things that can be done in this game that are just crazy that I never even thought about doing. I mean, you can basically do anything you want. So I'll give them props and credit for the open atmosphere that they've created. And I like the idea that they took some of this early 90s cyberpunk and vampire stuff and sort of rolled it in one big wad you know, because I can appreciate it because I lived through it. But this is more like playing a game. This is like playing a game that's based on a medium budget Mystery Science Theater movie. That's what it reminded me of. Just a lot of cheesiness, like you said. And I didn't even play the voice acting one, so I'm sure that gets double cheesy. But it's a cheesy, wacky game. All that said, would I recommend it? It's a tough call. If you're into this stuff, like, am I going to go back and finish it? No. And part of the reason is I don't like the combat. I don't like the cyber
inventory,
side of it.
Cyberspace.
But I do like the characters. I do think are interesting. I could definitely see lifting a lot of this for role playing stuff. I will say that. I saw a lot of stuff in here that I thought was intriguing. Some of the plots were pretty good too. This thing, the reviews were sort of middling. Let's say that. A lot of the reviews I found were like from Germany or France. I don't know why this didn't get reviewed so much here. Generation 4 gave this an 82 out of 100. Playtime gave it a 76. PC Zone gave it a 75. These are out of 100. PC Games 75 out of 100. So you can see this is in that C- D+ area of gaming.
Oh no, that's not true at all. I think those reviews are very good and fair.
I'm not saying no. I'm just saying that's where it falls. I'm not saying the reviews aren't right. I would sort of agree. I would say this game is not average in itself, but the execution of the game is I would say average. It does some stuff okay. It does some stuff horribly wrong. We did get one review on Discord, again for our buddy Frodo NL, who writes, not quite sure what to think of this one. Decent enough graphics and atmosphere, but the game is just confusing. After playing it for a while, I decided to look at a playthrough video, and I could not help but find it boring. This is clearly not my game, and I can't put a score to it. So there you go. He declined even to rate this one.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Because I have a feeling that there's probably some people out there that are putting on their trench coats every morning that love this game.
Yeah. I love...
And you know what? I'm not going to fault them for it.
Yeah. I love William Gibson, you know that. I love Shadowrun, and I love Vampire. So I was intrigued by this possibility of this, as goofy as it is. You know, one of the things you could have done to this that I think would have made it a better game is just get rid of the whole vampire element and change the plot and stuff. I think you'd have been better served just to stick it to one of the genres. I think they got a little too greedy, frankly. I think I would have stuck with just a cybernetic thriller as opposed to doing the vampire angle, because I think that's too much. And it does. I mean, I think it limits the appeal of the game. The people that are into vampires and want to see them in a cybernetic thriller, there can't be a ton of people out there outside of your Mystery Science Theater crowd. But still, I'm one of those people. I looked this up on eBay. You can get this one complete in a box. I saw one in Germany go for $70. You can get the CD version of this in the UK for... I saw them go for $23 and $27, but I haven't seen any that sold recently. So this is one of those games, Brent, that is that you're not seeing that much out there in the real world anymore. But
absolutely, if you want to play this game, don't go eBay it. Just buy it on Steam or Good Old Games.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay a whole lot of money, frankly.
Well, you can get it for $6.
That's right. You know what costs way more than $6, Brent? I mean, way more. What's
that?
Wheel.
Oh. Yeah,
the
wheel didn't cost that much, but yeah.
All right, Brent, it cost us big money, my son. So
it costs us a little piece of ourselves every time.
That's right. Hey, every time this thing spins, the soul box gets a little lower on the old essence chart. Thank God my innocence is low. So that's a whole other story there. So, Brent, this week we added as our retro rewind piece the almighty Apple II. There you see the big apple right there. And for our new entry this week, we've got games on the Android platform. Android. I don't have a lot of experience on the Android games, Brent. So, and now, Brent, you want to talk about these locks we've got on the wheel?
Yeah, we've got 3 locks on the wheel: the Atari 1200, the Sinclair ZX Spectrum, and the TRS-80. If those come up, they will stay on the wheel, and they will have a possibility of spinning again. And I do believe we are going to hit a lock.
We have not picked one. These are for our fallen shows that fell by the wayside, Brent. Are you
So
ready?
give it a spin.
Are you ready? Here we go. Get good and tight. Oh no! It's chat choice, everyone! Chat choice! Holy smokes, you in the chat room! We hope you're still hanging around. We need your help. So, Brent, tell them how chat choice works.
Chat choice?
Oh, they're already chiming in. Tell them how it works.
Throw out some opinions in there, guys, and we will randomly pick one from the things that are chosen, unless there's a clear winner. Which right now it looks like we do have a clear winner.
Well, let's give it a minute here, Brent.
While
we're waiting.
Oh well.
While we're waiting, let's talk about what's coming up of importance next week. In fact, it will be just slightly less than a week. January, July 18th. It will be happening. It says the Amigathon 2020. Where the Amigos Retro Gaming Channel raises money for the Children's Miracle Network hospitals. This has always been a perennial event that we always enjoy. We like raising money. We always have good luck. This event will kick off again Saturday, July 18th at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Brent. Always happening, but this year we've got some very awesome pals jumping in to help us out. Several hours of the show will be hosted by the one and only Neil from Retro Man Cave. And we'll also have our good buddy Amiga Bill, who'll be hosting a couple hours. I think he's got a special treat planned when he does his run through. There'll be a trivia contest. There's art contests. There's music stuff going on. It's going to be awesome, Brent. There's going to be some Amiga games played, and it should be a good time, and it's all for a worthy cause. The Amigathon 2020, the Children's Miracle Network. Every cent raised goes directly to them. Our grubby little hands aren't involved. The money doesn't come through us. It goes directly to the Children's Miracle Network. We're hoping to raise $2,000 this year to bring our total all-time total over the 10 grand mark, Brent, if you could believe that. And I know for certain, when I last checked, we had already raised over $1,000. So we're already sort of halfway to the goal.
Nice.
So hopefully we could go way past $2,000 and help those kids out. Charity is more important now, Brent, than it's probably been in quite some time. So there you go. So please join us for the Amigathon. So we've given the chat some time to contemplate. Brent, have you looked over the chat, and is there some sort of opinion on what we're going to be doing next week?
Yes, there absolutely is.
Oh, there is.
The overwhelming choice is the Amstrad CPC.
The Amstrad CPC. You know, I think the Amstrad won this once before. How do we get so many Amstrad fans in the chat room? And I'm looking over the chat. It looks like everyone wanted, not everyone. There's a few different ones there, but there's a lot of CPC fans out there. So, heck, let's give the people what they want. We will give that a shot, Brent. CPC it is. So, you asked, and we will deliver two Amstrad CPC games, Brent. Personally, I plan on doing a cheap ZX Spectrum port, just to make people happy. I'm going to do the cheapest ZX Spectrum port you ever saw. That's going to be awesome. They would call it instant hate for me for that comment. It should be fun, Brett. Do you remember the Amstrad games we've played in the past?
I mean, not offhand, but, you know, I know the Amstrad.
I believe Pinball, was it Pinball Dreams with the wacky release? I think we played that on here. That was an amazing modern Amstrad game. So I'm going to go back and play one of the, and it's funny, I've got a pretty good setup to play some Amstrad stuff now, so I'm going to go back and play one of the more classic games this time as opposed to a more modern game. That'll be fun, because like I said, I haven't got to play a whole lot of Amstrad, Brent. So, Brent, do you want to say hello to any of the chat people who picked this, or others?
Well, let's take a real quick look at our lurkers out there. Let's say hello to Atten, and we'll say hello to Feet, and let's say hello to Lurks, and finally, let's say hello to the Devil's the devilish.
Come on, you could do.
Let's say hello to Thicker.
You just got rid of the devil part, the guy.
And some of our chatters today. We've got Picard 2010. We've got Amiga Live, Duncan Styles, Carrington. Why do you make me read
I love
names?
it. Oh, this is your bit. This is your bit.
Proto NL. We got Mitz up in here. Buck Owen said hello. Paul Kitching. Let's see. I believe there was one more big old chatter way up here at the top. And no,
boy, that's a long way to go for that. So, again, next week, we'd like to thank everybody for joining us in chat. Next week, we'll be picking their choice, which is the Amstrad CPC. Please join us. Despite the fact the Amigathon's going on Saturday, I'm all man, and I'll be in here Sunday morning, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to rock and roll with some Amstrad. So, till we see you next time, you bite.
Thanks for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed the episode. We'd like to say hello to all of our YouTube subscribers, as well as all of our Twitch followers. We want to say a special thank you to Duncan Styles, who does all of our awesome Vectric graphics, and to BarkBit for writing our incredible closing theme. Would you like to help keep ARG spinning for as little as $1 a month? You can do so at anchor.fm/ARG-presents. Help keep us spinning. Just like these fine folks. John Deckman, Chris Foles, Frodo NL, Gary Heather, Anthony Jarvis, Graham W. Vetke, John Schaller, Terry Howard, Hermsky, and Retro Algae. Don't want to explain another credit card bill? That's okay too. You can help us by leaving us a positive review on Apple iTunes and Spotify. Have an idea you'd like to add to the wheel? You can contact us at argpresents@mail.com. ARG films live on Twitch every Sunday, 9 a.m. EDT. Hope to see you there.